Welcome, everybody. I'm just making sure everything looks right here. We're sharing, everybody here can see. We'll turn it around, show everybody in the room real quick. I'll turn it back around during the presentation. You can see we got a good turnout tonight at GDG Dallas. I am one of your organizers for GDG Dallas. My name is Luke. I'm this one over here. Stacy's also here, right down front. If you have any questions later about GDG Dallas, or you want to talk to us about potential topics, just reach out to us after the meetup. Our featured presenter tonight is Randal Schwartz, Flutter and Dart GDE. He has a 4-decade professional career, including programming, technical writing, training, podcasting, QA, network administration, and security review. Most keenly associated with Perl, Smalltalk, and now Dart, and of course, Flutter. So Randal, we've got you up on the big screen. You can see here. I will pin this so we can see you better. So take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for the invitation to present today. It always goes over well. It goes over well, typically. What am I saying? I'm trying to somehow counter that. I'm Randal Schwartz. I've been standing in front of rooms for decades now, so I'm used to this sort of stuff as much as I want to pretend I don't actually know what I'm doing, but I am actually do know what I'm doing. I whipped these slides together over the last few days, remembering all of a sudden I had a talk to give. This is going to be a summary of summaries. So if you've seen every single summary about Flutter Forward, there might be nothing new. However, I am available for questions. Feel free to ask the questions while we're going along. I'm not going to be watching the chat. So if you have a question, put it in either the YouTube chat or the chat here on Zoom. And I'm sure somebody will interrupt me and say, hey, Randal, what about that? I would appreciate if somebody would take care of that. And but let's get started. So the main focus for Flutter Forward was to do a few things. So one was to just sort of bring everybody up to speed about where Flutter is, where Dart is. There's some really interesting facts, and I'll cover a few of them here. But the key things about Flutter Forward were to introduce Flutter 3.7, yet another in a series of wonderful Flutter releases that has more features and deprecates a few things. But also to introduce Dart 2.19, which is the Flutter that, or the Dart that came along with this Flutter. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And also to talk about Dart 3. Dart 3 is right around the corner, and we'll be talking about that in a second. So in the State of the Union, big stats that were really impressive to me. I was really impressed by 5 million Flutter developers. That's like insane. Do they base that based on who applies for jobs? Because I don't know that I actually can imagine 5 million Flutter developers. Nearly 1 million apps in the stores. And I presume that's the ones that they can measure, or based on the ones they can measure in Google. I know that they don't have direct access to measuring that in the iOS App Store. So this is probably a slightly guessed number. Also, third largest project in GitHub ranked by contributors. And this is not that surprising when you consider that Flutter is really a community project. It's really something that people get together. I remember for like one of the Flutter releases, maybe Flutter 3.0, it was like something like 40 or 50% of the contributions were in fact from the community and not from Googlers. So this is really amazing as well. One of the nice things, one of the neat things announced here is that embedded is going to get a lot more interesting because they are targeting now RISC-V platforms. Great for embedded devices, great for IoT. There are a couple of demonstrations of some cool tools that way. On my other show, the Humpty Q&A, Simon has demonstrated some cool like badges on flexible material that are running a RISC chip behind it and running Flutter on that to make that go. So that's kind of cool. Also, to make it easier to talk to devices and things, FFI Gen and Genie Gen are getting better. And what this may mean is that rather than having to spend time writing a lot of interface libraries to be able to talk to the devices, to be able to talk to other libraries that are written in native code, you might be able to do it mostly or even completely directly from Dart. And that's going to be fascinating. Some other minor things that have happened, you can now put previous screenshots on pub. So you'll start to see this show up for a lot more pub things. You want to see the screenshot. Now it can be automatically handled by having it as part of your PubSpec YAML file, which is a nice thing. Another thing is that to enable better adoption, there are going to be more vertical toolkits so that people can take Flutter and apply it to a particular application area. We saw this last year when we talked about the game kit that got released to be able to start building games. And that included things like Flame, and Flame's been around, but to actually have sort of a overall architecture that's designed for games. What was announced at Flutter Forward was this new news toolkit, because apparently Flutter is being used for a lot of like regional papers and stuff like that to be able to build the local apps for regional news and regional video news too as well. I think they call it television. Yeah, so regional television and also regional newspapers. And so they're making that possible and easy to do the kinds of things you need to do to have those kinds of stuff. So it's also been incorporated in large platforms. In particular, they talked about the PUBG Mobile, which is a gaming platform. I don't know much about it, except a little bit that I saw on the screen while it was going on in Flutter Forward. But the key thing there is 1 billion users. So that means that Flutter is impacting huge numbers of people in order to have better stuff. Also being integrated now into Google Classroom so that they can move towards a unified code base for iOS, Android, and web. And they are claiming now that 98% shared code base across the platforms, and it reduced the overall total code by 66%. So these are all really, really great changes. So Flutter and Dart are looking good. They're being adopted more places. Things are happening that are better. And part of this release also helped us get things better for the web. For example, WASM support is going to be improved, integrated, developed. One of the things this might mean is that, at least on the web targets, there might be interoperability with the other platforms, because WASM is WASM. So if you can compile something in, say, F# and WASM down to WASM code, then of course, then Dart will be able to talk to it as well. That's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, already Skia being downloaded to your browser, if you select a Flutter application on particular platforms, is downloaded as a WASM tool, which is really already interesting, but they're making that a lot more general. You'll be able to write Dart code that will end up being like just a subroutine or a module in WASM that other apps opportunities can call. So real nice. Some web optimizations. One of the things is getting Canvas kit down so it's smaller, figuring out what parts aren't needed and not compiling those anymore. Also, same thing with font, not including every variation of a font if it's not being used or if it can't be used based on evaluation in the code. Those are both going to help reduce that time to first paint that is an issue with Web Flutter right now. Time to first paint, of course, if you're on a really fast network, it's still like a couple seconds. You know, if you're on a typical slow network, or God forbid on a slow cellular connection, it's just forever. So trying to get that reduced down is going to be really nice. Deferred loading as well, getting that working better, or maybe again. I know it was working for a little while, but making it a little bit easier to use so that you don't have to download your entire app and every possible page and every possible widget you might want to show. You can actually do it as you're progressing through the app. And now you hit the admin page, or now you hit the profile edit page, and now you download the code for that, rather than having to download the whole thing up front. Although that's not as bad as the original payload, it's still going to be, it'll help for some situations. So looking forward to that. I don't understand all of this, but pixel shaders are getting better. That's the thing that apparently helps you make colors and blends and things like that. And some of the work that went into making it better on the mobile platforms has now been migrated so that it's also working better in the web. That's going to be interesting. And one of the ways to look at all this and see, for example, that things are better and faster, as they did a demo of the new Wondrous app. And if you haven't seen that, that's open source, done by G. Skinner Company, who's done some amazing, wonderful stuff in the past. And part of that in doing Wondrous is it's a demonstration for his Flutter Animate package. I've started playing with that, and I tell you, it's the easiest way to animate something. You want a text box to fade in over 5 seconds is just text, animate, fade in, duration 5. And it's so simple. It's like just gets rid of all this extra sort of setting up animation controllers and animation stuff. It does that all in behind the scenes in a really effective way. So check out Flutter Animate if you haven't seen it yet. So let's talk about Flutter 3.7. What's new there? Material 3 continues to gain support. There was some additional support earlier, but now it's getting better. They're ticking off like 4/5 of the boxes now, so it's getting much better along that direction. Better support for adaptive layouts. So they've produced a Google provided thing called adaptive layout or something that's supposed to get the Material 3 sort of core design spec as part of your layout. I know there are like a dozen or 2 dozen or 5 dozen different layout things in the pub. This is going to be sort of the semi-official one from Google finally. So they're trying to bring that around. To me, it looks overly complex, but it's because of the way the Material 3 specification is written. Hopefully they'll have some really good docs on it and some great third-party videos that will talk about how to use it better. Just as an aside footnote here, if you're using any kind of layout system that changes the font size on your text based on the width of your screen, please stop. Just stop. And we can take care of this in the Q&A later if you really want to understand why. So anyway, my little rant there for a second. Another thing, again, I don't totally understand this, haven't done this personally yet, but better iOS release validation. Apparently there's some parts of stuff that have to be signed a particular way for the iOS store to accept your submission as being from you, and then go ahead through the process of approving it and shipping it out to the stores. DevTools got better, a lot more fancier things. A lot of things that we used to have to do by going to, for some of you that remember, the observatory to be able to drill down into certain processes. Those have all been moved now completely to the DevTools. And now the observatory, in fact, is no more. There's no more observatory port being set up as there had been up until now, regardless of whether you knew about it or not. That was already behind the scenes doing what it had to do. There's some new widgets, in particular menu bars. So now we can have desktop apps that look like the platform apps do. That's really cool. Cascading menus, same sort of thing, making that all work correctly. And again, these are in line with what Material 3 is promoting. And so it's good that this is kind of lining up with everything that we're used to. Also, custom context menus. So, you right click on something and up comes a little menu. That's now a lot more customizable. You can do what you want there. It's not just a tooltip anymore. It also works on selected items. So you can select some text that's selectable, which pretty much everything now. That's another thing they changed. And you do a right click that is particular to what you've selected. So that's going to be fun. Haven't played with that yet, but it looked like some good demos. Also a text magnifier. So on iOS, at least, I don't know about Android, but iOS, when you're selecting some text, if you hold down, a little magnifier window pops open so you can see precisely where your cursor is going. This now works in Flutter. So this is going to be cross-platform magnifier built in, great for being a little bit easier on the eyes to see. And for those of us that are getting slightly older, we do like to pay attention to that sort of stuff. So thank goodness for the people who are making this easier, even for me. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of other things. There have been a lot of third-party solutions now for widget catalogs starting to show up. I haven't played with any of these, but they did list Dashbook, Monarch, Storybook, Flutter, and Widgetbook. Now, I played with Widgetbook, had a couple of projects that used that previously, but this is great because it gives a chance for a developer to create the look and feel of a widget and then hand that app to a designer and say, use these widgets. I can do these trivially, and this is within our theme. And conversely, the designer can then come back and say, well, it doesn't look good this way. It should be this way. And it can communicate through this common mechanism of this is the style guide for our organization. And here's the things we can use. It kind of makes it easier for both developers and designers. So all of these are intentionally doing something like that. Again, I haven't played with anything but Widgetbook, but Widgetbook's been out there for a while as well. There were some previews of some features that aren't quite ready yet. So they aren't in 3.7. They'll probably be in an upcoming release very soon. I keep watching the commits every day to the Flutter repo, and it just keeps getting crazier and bigger and better. So things are obviously moving along. 2D scrolling, and this is sort of interesting. So, we have scroll horizontally and we have scroll vertically, but how do you do like a spreadsheet where you can wander all the way around and do it efficiently? So they've got some ideas about how to do that. The example was actually shown was an example spreadsheet with sticky headers. So you'd have the column headers always stay with whatever column they're attached to, but then you'd also have the side labels stay with whatever side it was attached to. So cool looking stuff. Looking forward to playing with some of that as part of the core. I think there have been third-party pub things that do this, and that's probably where some of the inspiration is coming from. Another big one, and this is going to be essential for desktop, it's going to also be an advantage in web apps, is being able to have multiple windows. So this is going to be great because finally I'm going to be able to have that daughter window that does the detail for the master on desktop without having to just put it in an overlay on my existing window. Now to do that, of course, it's like, well, where does your context tree go up to? And there's a new widget called View that sort of corrals everything for that window. And it has its own material widget, whatever the thing's called. Media query. Media query has its own media query that tells about that window as opposed to the other window, and so on. So it's good stuff. Also, this was demonstrated as well. Embedded elements on the web. So take a Flutter app and compile it down and make it a single element on your web tree. Okay, and then that can then interoperate, as they showed, with native JavaScript and native DOM elements. So you can have your Flutter app create and destroy other DOM elements or run JavaScript, and the JavaScript can likewise in reverse communicate back. This is going to be interesting, especially when you get into trouble when you're trying to take an existing website and change just parts of it to Flutter. this will help fix that up really nicely. Another thing that was discussed is this ongoing development in this structure called Impeller. And what Impeller is it's a new rendering engine that is replacing Skia. So as you may know, Skia is the rendering engine for Chrome. And that was adopted as the rendering engine for iOS and Android and Flutter originally. And when we got back to the web, we couldn't guarantee that it was Chrome. So we had to download Skia behind the scenes. You didn't notice this, but had to download Skia written in WASM, which was really bizarre. That's been the way it's been done for a while, but it has some limitations because it was designed for Chrome. It was designed to handle all the things that a DOM would want to do in order to be rendered, and some of those aren't necessary for Flutter. So you're carrying around a lot of code that you'll never need because it's not needed to handle Flutter. So Impeller starts over, says, what do we actually need and how to make it better? And this was mostly targeted, part of it was targeted to make it smaller. So reduce the app size, reduce the WASM size for web when we get around to the web. Improve performance is a key factor here. So make everything faster, optimized for precisely the kinds of things that Flutter is asking the rendering engine to do, rather than just the general implementations that Skia was being used. But here's a key one. It's to reduce the startup jank, particularly in iOS. And that's because it's going to be able to pre-compile the shaders and do a bunch of stuff that Skia couldn't exactly be coaxed to do. So this is going to be really nice. There is some 3D support, and some of that was shown off at Flutter Forward, being able to do essentially a scene and create that and render it quickly in sort of 3D mode. So not full 3D support. That's not really what's being planned, but it does have some 3D support. So maybe you'll start to see more applications. I'm thinking in particular, it's probably going to be really nicely to use alongside AR to be able to have augmented reality things that have to have a depth to them. And so there'll be some depth to them using the new Impeller stuff. Impeller is first on iOS. That's the main target, because trying to take care of that startup jank on iOS has been a long-standing problem. Been getting beat up in the press over the years about that, and lots and lots of tickets. I think it's probably the most upvoted ticket on the current list of issues. But the goal of that is eventually to get rid of Skia entirely. So that would be later on all the other platforms. But of course, iOS is first. As soon as iOS gets working well, they'll start looking at doing the right porting for everything else. So that's most of the Flutter news. Now we'll get into the Dart news. The big thing, I am so happy this came along, is isolate run. Isolates have been used or are used to basically put some computation on a separate event loop on a separate thread. And this means it can then be launched on a separate core running completely in parallel with your existing UI code. And this has been very handy, especially when you had heavy computations, to get it out of the IO thread so that you can do those without having to interrupt yourselves and start skipping frames and stuff. Isolates have been around for a long time, actually since the beginning of Dart that I am aware of. But what's happened is it's been getting simpler and simpler and simpler. Some of you may remember the compute function, the global compute function that got added to make it easier to interface with isolates. That was good. But isolate run is trivial. You can use it just like a function anywhere you want. It can take any arbitrary function to run with some limitations, but you probably won't run into those limitations. It'll run it, give you back a future. When it's done running, it will give you either when you await the future, it will either be the future complete or the future error. So if there's an error over the isolate, you're going to see that error on your side. And if you get a value back, you get a value. But it launches the isolate, tears down the isolate all automatically. Isolate launching has gotten a lot faster. It's still not completely trivial, but it's a lot faster. So you can use this casually without having to think about it too hard. The other thing is that it supports both Dart and Flutter. So isolate, or the compute function, was only in the Flutter library. So you could only use it on Flutter. You couldn't use it on Dart. And Dart has some valid applications that would be nice to run with isolates easily. And so compute wasn't available there. But that's okay. This works. Isolate run is in Dart, and it's in Dart 2.19. And it basically handles almost all your basic needs. Basically, every time you think about, I want to run this on a separate core, what do I do, right? And it's also especially, again, important if you're doing something that's going to block IO. You don't want to be dropping frames, so you run it over in an isolate. Performant and easy to use, which is great. The legacy interfaces are still there. Now, why might you still want to use the legacy if this works so nicely? Well, isolates still take time to start up and tear down. So you might want, for example, to start an isolate, have it do something, return some result, and then keep running in the sense that it's all warmed up, ready to take the next action, and so on. Or maybe you feed a stream of actions into it and it gives them back as quick as it can. So that kind of stuff still requires the full interface. That still takes work. But this simple task of running something in the background nicely and easily is now very, very easy to use. And another thing that was fixed in 2.19, some of you may have run into this, is that an isolate now can use platform plugins. So this is the things like, for example, like talking to your accelerometer, or talking to your sound, things like that. All of this stuff that uses the platform interfaces can now be called from an isolate, and somehow it keeps it all correct about where the responses have to go to. Does it go back to the main thread, or does it go to one of the isolated threads? This also means, for example, that you can use HTTP client fetches in the background in an isolate separate from your main thread. That was also a little tricky before. So this, good news, great stuff. Okay, now let's talk about Dart 3. This is the big news. So Dart 3, great stuff. You can use it today. It's available as an alpha release. So you can play with it today, get it right out of the same repos that are there. Just check out a different version. Some features are not yet fully coded, but they're getting close. A lot of the stuff that has been specified for the features I'm going to talk about in a few minutes are available to be played with. And it's one thing that just happened the last couple of weeks is that it became available in the beta branch of Flutter. And what that means is if you're normally on stable, but if you select beta, then you'll get this slightly more advanced Dart 3.0 branch that will have 3.0 alpha. This still doesn't enable the features because you have to go in and update a couple of files. You have to add some things to analyzer options. You have to add some things to the command line to enable these experiments. But once you do that, it is acting like Dart 3. So it's going to be interesting. Now, one of the most important things to understand about Dart 3 is that it is the end of an era for NNBD support or pre-NNB support. That's not null by default. Some of you may remember the transition we made to Dart 2.12, where all of a sudden we had legacy code and modern code as a result. Well, that legacy code, everything that was pre 2.12, will no longer work at all with 3.0. There's no legacy at all, no legacy support at all. Now, this is reasonably done because of diminishing usage. It turns out that something like 95% of the top downloaded things in the pub are already not even just Dart 2.12 compatible, but Dart 3 compatible already. So it's not going to be a problem for most people. But the thing is, right now, there has to be code in the compiler for, is this in legacy mode? Then do this, otherwise do that. And there's a ton of those. And what's worse is I may be in non-legacy mode, but I'm calling a legacy mode library. And so now things can come back from there that will be weird in my code. So there's all these weird pathways, and they all had to be tested and verified. And when bugs were reported, it had to be fixed in multiple places. Too much work. So bye-bye pre 2.12. We are saying goodbye forever, and that's going to make it interesting. However, it also means the onus is on you. If you're still running in legacy mode, if you don't say at least 2.12 in your pub spec, excuse me, if you don't say at least the Flutter that goes with that. Oh, no, that's right. It's the Dart SDK in the pub spec, right? So 2.12 in the pub spec has to be there or higher. So the features look a little bit like this. So again, oops, and I pressed the wrong direction. Again, getting old. What a deal is that? Okay, so what we're going to get soon, we can see a little bit of it today by looking at the alphas, is we're going to get some new features. We're going to get records. I'll talk about all these in a minute. We're going to get patterns. We're going to get class annotations like sealed. I think there's like 9 different annotations. And you should see the chart where they have like different combinations of different things, and that means different stuff. It's pretty weird, but they figured as long as they were going to have to add sealed, they might as well add all the rest of that stuff that you may be used to from other languages. So there we go. So these are going to be available very soon. I would speculate something in the next 2 or 3 months they're going to land on at least beta. Well, they're already in beta Flutter, but also land in stable pretty soon.
We have a question.
So wait, yeah, go ahead.
What do you know by pattern? Is that pattern matching or something else, like pattern expression?
Patterns here are talking about things like Rust and other things. I've got a slide on that coming up. Is that what you were asking? I hope. I can only hear part of it.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, I'll continue. You'll see it in a couple more pages. So I'm just giving you the high level overview here. There has been a lot of discussion about static metaprogramming, or as we like to just call it, macros. These would be built into the compiler so that what you're doing effectively with Builder right now can be done directly by the compiler while it's compiling it, instead of having to generate all these files separately. This is going to be a big boon for a lot of things. Imagine JSON serialization and freezed and things like that, and Riverpod generators, where you don't have to sit and wait for the builder to go do its stuff. You can just simply launch and it does it. The other advantage then is that you are looking at the translated code in the debugger, so you can see exactly what's going on. It's going to make it so much easier to do macros than what we had before. It will finally make up for the fact that we lost mirrors a couple years ago. Now it'll all work nicely again. And again, it's on the roadmap, still being specified, because when they bring macros in, they want to do it right the first time. Because it's going to be so fundamental to the language, it's got to be done right. And they're so focused on making sure that records and patterns and class annotations and a couple other minor things are all correct, that it's fine that they're just pushing macros down a ways. Although I kind of wished I would have had macros by summertime. I'm expecting it's more going to be down towards the winter months for us on the way down. So let's talk about records. Records are called tuples in other languages. Basically, it's a collection, a loose collection of multiple values. And so it's a casual association of variables and values. This is going to be great then to be used, for example, a value in an expression. So finally, we'll be able to write a comma b equals b comma a, and it'll make sense. It'll actually take the b and a and swap them in the into two new variables. Actually, I guess it only works if they're the same type. If there are two different types, that'd be a little weird. But no, same type. You could swap those though. That's going to be nice. More often, what it's probably going to be is the destructuring of a return value from a function. And there were a lot of examples given in the Flutter Forward material showing this off. So I'd recommend you go to the Flutter Forward site and look for some of the detailed videos that were not part of the live presentation, but actually part of the stuff afterwards. Check those out. But this will be, for example, you return both a latitude and a longitude as a loose type from a function, and then you destructure it to the latitude variable and the longitude variable on the output. Again, many other languages have this. Finally, Dart's going to get it full on. But the most important thing that records have to be in there for is patterns, being able to do sophisticated matching and destructuring for that. And by patterns, I mean essentially switch gone wild. So right now we can take switch, we can take an expression and match it against a series of constants. And based on one of those constants matching, we end up running some code. That's the basis of a switch. Okay, this is going to be that. I hate to overuse the phrase on steroids, so just pretend I didn't say that. But this is going to be, yeah, switch gone wild. So it's going to select some code to execute based on both the types and values of the inputs. So you'll be able to say, if this is a int, do one thing. If it's a double, do another. If it's a num as a catch-all, do another, and so on. And if there's two things, do this. If there's three things, do that. It's going to be extremely coolly flexible. The items can also include guard clauses. So you could say, for example, well, this case, but only if the value is less than 10. And then this case, but only if the value is greater than or equal to 10. So you'll be able to build all that into your selection cases. It's going to be way flexible. I'm imagining you could probably put your entire application in one big switch. I don't know, maybe it's a little weird. But it does eliminate the need then for your nested if else stuff that you're going to have. One of the interesting side effects of all this process, and I know some of you have wanted this, the switch will no longer be a statement. Hey, it's an expression now. So you can have a switch in the middle of some calculation to switch between one or the other of these very values. That's going to now finally work right inside your other expressions. And those can be nested, obviously, to the nth degree, making it extremely hard to read the code. You thought you got indented before. This gets really indented all over. But this is going to be a great side effect of this pattern work, is that switches will finally become functions. And again, I'm not going to go too deep into this. If you played with Scala, Kotlin, Rust, F#, Swift, Haskell, you've already seen patterns and said, why doesn't Dart have them yet? Soon. Remember the word from a couple slides ago, soon, right? One of the ways this is going to be handy is in parsing JSON. So for example, one of the things that happens when you're parsing JSON is you're looking at an element and it might be either a single thing or a list of things. I hate that when they do that, but you know, these APIs, they're not designed with converting it to Dart objects in mind. So this is going to make it much easier to have all those conditional cases do the right thing all the way down. So it's going to be pretty slick. It also means that you can have a dynamic as the thing you're switching on, and then ask, is this dynamic a list? Okay, then do that code. Or is this a map? Do this code. And the value on the left-hand side, the selector, can actually have map key comma value, and you end up with the actual map populated correctly with keys and values. Ooh, Really cool stuff. I'm looking forward to playing with it. One of the things I think the impact's going to be, though, is that and I've been saying this for a while, let's see how close my prediction is actually going to be. The Dart tour that everybody should have read by now, instead of being an hour, is going to be 2 hours, because you're going to have to introduce patterns, you're going to have to explain how those are, because these are going to end up in core programs. It's not like a feature you can hide off in the corner somewhere and only mention. It's going to be fundamental. Everybody's going to be using patterns once they get out there. Does support wildcards, does support algebraic evaluations. So this type and that value or the other. So really almost complete expressions on the left-hand side of your choice for your switch. Really cool stuff again. The other thing is that it will support exhaustiveness checking. So sometimes you may have noticed that when you put an enum as the thing you're selecting and you give like 3 out of the 5 choices, you get a warning that says, no, where are the other 2 choices? That's checking to make sure that every possibility is fulfilled. This same thing again, not on steroids, what's the word? Gone wild, right? It's going to work as well. So there's going to be complex calculations to make sure that you have figured out every possible way the input data has a case on the output side, if not just through a default of some kind, because you can always add that and always fix that problem by adding a default. But this is going to be really cool too. So you can do the math and go, oh, I didn't cover the case where it's an int and a double. Yeah, I didn't cover that, did I? This thing will figure it out. It'll work nicely. Okay, so that's most of my presentation. If you want to keep up with what's actually happening, I have a list of a bunch of things that I pay attention to every day. The Flutter Breaking Changes gives you some summaries of this, including for the 3.0 release, what's breaking, what's new. Those are all in there. And Flutter What's New, right? The Flutter roadmap is available. That can give you sort of the long-term directions. It basically laid out where Flutter is supposed to go for this year. So they do it on a year-by-year basis. That's really nice. Dart also has what's new, and that's going to be like the Dart 3.0 changes or even the Dart 2.19 changes. There's way more than anybody ever puts in a talk. They just tell you go to these places. That's why we can kind of get away with it. There's also, if you want to see what Dart features are coming up, including detailed descriptions of macros and a few other things that are being considered in the future, go to the Dart funnel. The Dart funnel, you can watch, you can see how things are progressing. You can see historical things that got rolled in, when they got rolled in, and look at the detailed documentation for it. Like if you've ever scratched your head and wondered exactly what's in spreads and what's in collection for and collection if, the detailed docs are there because they got added in I think 2.13 or whatever it was added to. No, 2.03, back in a while. Okay. Don't quote me on any of that. Okay. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. There it is there. And again, we'll make a clickable link on these when we have it in the show materials. And that really is the end of what I came to talk about. So do we have questions? I should probably look at the chat in case somebody's chatting.
The switch that you were talking about, is that only material 3 or is that Dart? Where is that coming from?
I didn't hear the first part of your sentence. Sorry.
The switch. I know it's Dart, but I'm just trying to figure out, like, how are they making the changes? Do we need to import anything? Like,
no, the language itself is changing.
Oh,
so
okay.
Switch is going to have the new feature of being both a statement, because it'll be backward compatible that way, but also an expression. So you can say final foo equals switch something,
Right.
you know, and that'll be brand new. That'll be brand new, but that's going to be in the language. If you want to play with it right now, you can already go to the Dart 3 Alpha, which is in the Flutter beta. Sorry for the complication there, but that's the way they've chosen to release it. And then, or you can go to the Dart master, but then you don't have a Flutter to put it up with. But anyway, and then enable the flags that it talks about when you're looking at the Dart alpha and Dart master. And then once you do all that, these will be there, but they're built into the language.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Hey, Randall, I think it seems like the records and the pattern matching are being developed in parallel. I was wondering if, for the pattern matching case, are they going to be able to support like matching against partial records?
Yes. Yes. It's, in fact, records were sort of a predecessor of patterns. You almost had to have records in place to be able to do the destructuring that a pattern needs on the left-hand side. So this actually is sort of fortunate that it's all going to come out in the same release to us, but there was definitely a time when the developers were working with records and they didn't have patterns yet. So records have been there longer. Yes.
I have another question too. That's kind of like
Sure.
what like idiomatic Dart and Flutter in terms of like laziness. Like all the map calls are all lazy, right? And you were talking about like the Flutter animation thing where you're like specifying the scaling, the filtering, things like that, where it's like chained together. As far as like idiomatic Dart and Flutter goes, should we be building like libraries and writing our codes towards being lazy, or having that kind of pattern where we build up and do like a to list or like a dot build or things like that, like a builder pattern?
I'm not sure how to answer that because it seems like a bit vague. I suppose the only answer, of course, is depends.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean,
I don't
like
know.
JavaScript, right? You call map, get whatever the original list was,
Yeah.
For all the map calls in Dart, it's lazy, regardless.
Right.
Of
Oh, okay. For things that are operating that return an iterable, yeah, that's not going to change. It's still going to return an iterable. So if you still want to have a list come out of that, you need to add to list. However, you could have one of your pattern matches be, if this is an iterable, then call to list on it. And that's going to be real convenient as well. So you can specifically recognize that it's iterable and it should be mapped first and do that. So mostly what patterns are going to give you is the ability to recognize that some things are of subclasses that you've created, not the core class, and be able to do what you have already been able to do by saying, if this is that, if this is that, but you won't have to do all that because it's all going to be a short syntax in a pattern.
But my question is more towards like, what should we, as library makers, as developers, be like aiming towards in terms of, being consistent with other developers and what's best practices? Because like I said, like the map is lazy, but other calls like our builder calls where it's just like they're effectively returned immediately, like an expression that evaluated that map or whatever, that transformation. So like as a library writer or something like that, like how would you expect a lot of these calls to be made? Should it be lazy where you just like chain up these, like I was saying, like the animate library, you call each one,
Yeah.
but in effect you're actually taking steps and it's actually executing. It didn't build up at once, and then it wasn't just
I think the answer is still just going to be depends. I mean, each case is a case on its own. I don't think there's any global sweeping thing I can say other than, yes, we have many options. Yes, as a developer of libraries that other people will use, we have to think about how it's going to be used and produce the proper thing. And that's always been true. And nothing I've said in the last hour affects that.
Okay. Because I was thinking too, like, if there was a construct of like a lazy array or an array list, why not just follow, at least for maps and stuff, whatever the initial structure was? So if it was an array, you should materialize that array as soon as map was called, kind of thing.
Yeah, again, case by case, it's really all I can answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Sure.
Thank you, Randall. I sent you an invitation on LinkedIn, so
Hope we can connect on there.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, well, if that's all the questions that we've got, anybody on the Zoom have questions? I didn't see any others pop up in the chat, but I just want to kind of make sure that we leave time for that.
I'm just reading the chat right now here. And I haven't looked at the YouTube chat. I don't know if there's anybody actually even watching it on YouTube, but except maybe me. I had it pulled up.
Gone viral.
Yeah, it's not really. Yeah, the guarded functions is definitely going to be huge. Just the idea. I mean, on every release of the spec, I kept seeing them add more and more technology to the left side of the switch. I forget what they call the clauses on the left side, but it just kept getting weirder and weirder and cooler and more. Oh, and it does this too. Oh, look at that. You know, including things like being able to essentially have varargs. And I think that's built into records as well. So you'll have essentially ... in the L value side of a record, and it's going to absorb all the remaining parameters or something. It's going to be like varargs. Now, as soon as they can get that into function signatures, I'll be happy. I'll be very happy, but not yet. Yeah, although they look very similar, maybe we'll see. Yep. Anything else? Anyone else?
That double scroll, the double touch double scroll thing.
Yeah.
There's the double touch, double scroll. Is that still a way to tell a Flutter app?
Oh, that hasn't gone away. That still seems to work on the latest releases. So I'm sure that's not going to go away. I'm sure it's just going to be there. Because it's a nice shibboleth, you know. It's kind of nice. And there are 5 other ways, I'm told, but I didn't write them down while somebody was rattling them off. And so I don't have them anywhere permanently anymore. Just that one.
I've been trying to check on every app now ever since you told me that. I knew it.
Well, if there's nearly 1 million apps in the store, it must be some of the ones I'm downloading, right? It would seem that way.
It's hard for it not to be some of them. So, okay, well, I think we're going to wrap up the meeting for everybody online. We'll end the live stream here in a minute, and then we'll do some raffles and prizes and stuff for people in the room. Thank you again, Randall, for speaking. We'll give a big round of applause.
You're muted. No. I didn't hear any applause. It was just hands doing this. No, it's below the sound threshold. It's not letting it come through. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. I've had applause before. It's no big deal.
Okay, well,
Wait, I have a question. Are you drinking a 2-liter bottle of what? What is that?
It's a Big K. This is the Kroger brand. So it's their house brand of Diet Cola. Yes. Big K.
I thought it was
Yep.
water. Yeah. I was like, wait.
Somebody like
Yeah.
say, go ahead and say,
It'll take me 3 days to get through that, but it's just convenient more than open up little cans all the time. So
oh, you were
I'll
telling
just get a
me
2-liter.
convenience of age a second ago.
Yay.
Like, what's that diet Coke thing to you?
That's the thing.
Hey, at least it's not actual K.
Yeah. Hey, no carbs. No carbs. That's the story of my life these days. No carbs. Well, not no, but real low.